Recently, Bangalore faced torrential rains, and many parts of the city were flooded, disrupting life for residents and office goers in a bad way. Bangaluru's traffic is legendary for being nightmarish. We have the most unimaginatively engineered roads, and there are many problems that are unique to Bangalore and also common to many parts of the world, leave alone India. Bengaluru is also one of the cities that is on the top of the pile for its technology services and startup companies. These companies wake up to the problems when they occur, conduct meetings with lawmakers, and then forget about it. Their anger is quick to rise when you point out the irony. Yet a major infrastructure such as Bangalore Airport and its access and mobility has been work in progress for the past 20 years, inconveniencing and infuriating every single one of the citizenry. Has there been a dearth of famous names on committees and boards, or the social media outcry and meme fests? Something doesn't add up here, isn't it? Why do we continue to live and tolerate so much mediocrity around us while crowing about how great our work contributions are to society? Where is the innovation that we all need so desperately, at least to prevent pseudo disasters, leave alone disasters that are out of human control? This episode of the podcast is dedicated to the theme of innovation. We visit the portals of IIT Madras for a dialogue with Professor Dr. Prabhu Rajagopal at the Department of Mechanical Engineering, whose research and teaching focuses on innovation and design-led solutions to inspection problems in complex structures and under challenging operating conditions, and is also faculty in charge of the Center of Innovation. With over 25 funded projects, 180 technical articles, 25 filings, 4 granted IPs, and a granted copyright trademark each, he is widely recognized for work on remote asset management in the marine and energy sectors and social focus on water, health, and sanitation. Prior to joining IIT, Professor Rajagopal worked as a postdoctoral researcher at Imperial College London, where he developed hybrid modeling techniques for ultrasonic inspection of welds on a Rolls-Royce funded project. Let's zero in onto you. Despite coming from the most challenging of academic environments, you have still managed to retain both your poetic, philosophical, and scientific side.
Yeah.
Give us a little insight into that. You have a recent publication. How would that publication, and that publication is distributed on Amazon, how would it change in a digital world, according to you?
Sure, thank you. And it's a weighty question, but I think the fact that I had exposure to different environments, I think sort of helps. And also, I think I come from a family background and the upbringing where some of these things are appreciated, whether it's poetry or my dad was fond of literature, Shakespeare, for example. We were exposed to these things from childhood. So my dad was again fond of Wordsworth and Keats, all these poets. My mom is a big aficionado of literature since childhood. So I have had an active interest in the arts, the literature, and poetry. Although my dad forbade me from learning art in a serious manner because he felt that I'm going to get distracted from my studies. I sort of took the view that look, this is how the world is, right? So given the background where we come from, there is only one way forward here.
Right.
So let me go forward in this way, but I will continue to do the other things on the side. So I maintained a very lively interest in poetry. I was fortunately in the UK, which is actually the mecca of English language poetry, and there are, just like here you have Kural on buses.
Yeah.
In London, even the underground tube will have great poets written over there as such. So I have that sort of continued to nurture my poetic interests. And Imperial College Library, Imperial College London is where I did my PhD from. They have a fantastic library, and I could read some of the best poets, including Neruda, for example, who remains my Pablo Neruda is one of my strong inspirations as such. And they had this excellent bookstore on campus. So here too we have a bookstore which I believe needs an upgrade. So you could get the best latest books in there. So, and I could read a lot of Neruda out there, and I think that's how my interest in poetry continues. And I think London is a melting pot of design, art. You have some of the best galleries out there. You have Tate, which has both the traditional as well as modern art galleries. I've been to Tate Modern Gallery countless numbers of times. Victoria and Albert is just next to Imperial College, London. And then there is this, in Hyde Park, there is the Serpentine Lake. And by that you have the Serpentine Art Gallery, which happens every summer. Through that, in the 7 or 8 years I was there, I could get acquainted with the best of the latest contemporary art. So my poetry is actually what I call as a art poetry, where I try to explore different themes like cubism or minimalism or even magical realism through poetic means as such. Now this is maybe ultimately connected to also the philosophical quest. You mentioned philosophy, right? In the Indian philosophical tradition, we are goaded to explore Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, right? The truth, auspiciousness, and the beautiful.
Right.
So over the years, in some way, I have sort of managed to connect everything I do to the same quest. If it is poetry, it is the same thing. I am exploring the beauty and the rhythm in the language. Whether it is science, it's the same thing. I'm making a new discovery, and there is this ananda of discovery. And philosophy is also the same thing. It is a quest of the truth and trying to understand what is the true basis of all existence. And some of that comes from the family tradition as such. So, for example, when I was growing up, there was a book that was given to me by a sage who were visiting, and the book said, what is sleep? And then the answer was, the book is by Adi Shankaracharya, and the answer says, a person's ignorance is sleep. That was when I was 12 or something. That sort of stayed me all till today. I'm trying to answer that question, like, what is ignorance then? Right? So if you are not ignorant, then are you not asleep ever? So those are the kinds of things that live with you, and I've sort of unified everything, so to say, in the sense my quest in science to me is the same quest in poetry as the same in art or design that I take an avid interest in as such. And the environment like London, for example, has played a role in spurring and catalyzing these interests. Now coming to your last point on publications and mass availability of these publications, I think I'm thrilled about it. Right? As a poet, for example, I publish poetry for free. Right? Mostly poetry goes, there is very little publication interest in poetry. So we publish it on blogs, on websites, people access it. Sometimes people may be copying those lines, who knows, right? And the same thing will happen with our ideas in the scientific world as well. But if we trust the goodness of people, majority of them are going to cite us, right? This means our work is going to reach a wider audience as such. And what more do we want, to me, as I would say I'm an artist more than a scientist. So what more do you want than an audience?
The idea of innovation, in my opinion, has to make an impact on life, because now digital allows us. How does that take place?
I am a faculty in the mechanical engineering department. I am an associate of our laboratory, the Center for Non-Destructive Evaluation. And this laboratory is, may I say, one of the most innovative groups in our campus. Today we have had up to 12 startups come out of our laboratory. Students who have graduated from here, or students who are studying with us, have come up with these companies and so on. So it's very innovative. There is a lot of churn going on in our laboratory here. In addition, I am also a startup founder in some of these ventures that have come out. I am a fellow traveler on the journey, and I today am the faculty in charge of an organization called Center for Innovation. The Center for Innovation is our Tinker Lab with a motto: walk in with an idea, walk out with a product. So today it's this campus's largest student activity. Almost 10% of the students participate in it, and there are several clubs in the Center for Innovation. About 13 of them are dedicated to hobby activities, and 6 of them are involved in competition. Things like Hyperloop, Formula racing, Mars, sending a probe to Mars, sending a rocket to the upper atmosphere, and stuff like that. So competitions, and there are as many as 4 support teams only dedicated to supporting all other activities. For example, there is a branding and engagement, there is a project management, there is a web ops and analytics. So these are clubs that just support all other teams and so on. So innovation on this campus is now happening in this what do you say, multi-spectral environment. Students come here with a very high degree of training and qualification. They're all brilliant young people, and they have great ideas, right? But what we have done is we have created fora where they can come and explore these ideas. So to me, innovation is about new creation, right? Innovation. So the thing is there in the word, and it is not just any new creation, but rather trying to fulfill certain objectives. Right? Always innovation has a framework in which it sits in. So there is a worldview that you are espousing, right? There is also the spirit of the times, or the zeitgeist, as they say, that you are adhering to, and there is an overarching what do you say, philosophy as well that is sort of driving you. So within the Indian context, these are all today quite well laid out, right? The worldview here, we are coming out of the old socialist worldview, right? Today we believe in capitalism with a heart. We still want to make technology serve the society. I think that is the general spirit of entrepreneurship in this country, and this is due to our historical reasons. Also from our independence period onwards, we've always been saying Swadeshi, that low technology that can come up from local roots, that can benefit our society here and now. And this spirit is sort of reinforced in the echo chambers of our society, and that is the general guiding spirit and worldview in our society, where we believe that any technology is only as good as what solution it can bring, what benefits it can bring to the society. It must be affordable. It must be solving certain very vital, pressing problems as such. So that is the kind of worldview we are operating on. The spirit of the times, of course, is well defined by this government, where we are saying make in India, make it indigenous. But this is actually not anachronistic. Again, as I said, Mahatma Gandhi himself was saying Swadeshi. And so we seem to have a tradition of trying to dip into our own roots to try and find solutions. So it is in this context that innovation is thriving within our campus. So our campus is not an island. We are part of our wider society, where these are the kinds of trends that are shaping our mindset. Today we have provided many fora for students to bring out their innovative spirit. So there is something known as a tech soc, what we call as technical society. Over there, projects are given out for students in their first year as they join freshman year. So they come up and solve some ideas. So they get their they get their hands dirty with these projects. And then you have CFI, which is Center for Innovation, which is what I am championing. And Center for Innovation has many clubs, and each of these clubs is actually extraordinarily structured. So there is first year is volunteers, second year is team members, third year is coordinators. By fourth year they become advisors actually. So they are and then the baton is passed on to the next generation as such. So through doing these projects, these people are honing their different skills. They are managing projects. They're also raising money for themselves. We give them some seed funding, but many of them are raising money on their own for their projects. So for example, Hyperloop, this team has performed so well, and they have raised close to maybe 20 crores of money on their own. And these are students.
Right.
As such, right? So they raise their own money, and they compete in international events where they must compete with the best teams from the world. So this is CFI. Now there are layers on top of this. We have something known as the entrepreneurship cell, where students are exposed to entrepreneurial ideas. How do you make a business plan? How do you pitch to investors? How do you have a product market fit? So these are some themes that they are exploring over there. We then have something called Nirman, which was actually originally a CFI club. It's become its own activity now, which is a pre-incubation cell. So if somebody has great ideas but still not ready to take it to the market, you can go and house yourself in Nirman. Then on top we have few other forums, such as the Gopalakrishnan Deshpande Center, and their role is to translate laboratory research into the product, into marketable products. Not necessarily from students, but more from research laboratories. So there is GDC, there is Rural Technology Cell, and so on. And finally, on top of all of this sits our incubation cell. IIT Madras Incubation Cell is a independent body. It's a Section 8 company promoted by IIT Madras. So it's even physically it sits outside of IIT campus, although connected by an umbilical cord. Right. It's its own organization. Right. So when you've passed through Nirman, for example, you know that you have a product that's that's very well fit for the market. You already have some investment interest, and you know that this is a product that's going to work. You have what they call as a minimum viable product. You cross over the campus and go to the incubation cell. You don't need to be graduated, but your idea needs to be very mature for you to get incubated over there. And this is how innovation is happening on campus.
So we have some inherent flaws in the evolution of the innovation ecosystem. How do you deal with those challenges?
I think the answer has to be nuanced, because I think historically our training has been more theoretical, more fundamental insight based kind of training. So our students would be very good at problem solving. So if you give them a problem to solve and that problem is exciting enough for them, I bet they are going to solve it for you. And I've seen this time and time again. That when a new problem is given to them, which is very exciting, and I tell them, look, if you solve this, you're going to get a nature paper out of it. It's going to be so significant. And 99% of the time, I'm going to get an answer out from he or she. But when it comes to sustained working, on something, and where the premises may not be as exciting as this, right? It need not be a world-beating thing, right? But you need to work on it in a sustained manner. That is where I think they are failing, and that is where the challenge is. And as I said in the beginning, about 10% of our students are involved in CFI, but that means 90% are not.
Right.
And so I can 100% tell you, if you hire somebody who's had a background from our Center for Innovation, and I'm not saying this because today I am their faculty in charge, I have been associated with them in various capacities over the years, you're not going to fail with them. They're not going to fail you. Right? They are going to help you solve this problem. The reason being, they are in these high pressure situations, but drawn out over a period of time. They know how to work in a team. They know that they don't have to solve everything. There are other people who can help them in this process. Right. So they are good team players. They know how to manage projects. That's a very important skill. Right? Some of our students are extremely good at gathering information over a short period of time, but they will not be able to manage their time over 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. But that's the training they are getting over here. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned about competition, right? But competition is something that is hardwired into our psychology, I think, right? Because of our population, we are competing for things all the time. Right. So how about merging fun with competition? That's what we are trying to do at CFI. And so students are coming in, doing competitions, but in a fun environment. So to answer you straightforward, I think the way to do this is to make students go through a evaluation process that is more sustained, and that is more about not about instant problem and instant solving an instant gratification, but rather about putting in sustained effort over a period of time. Now, a lot of us have transformed this way. So, for example, increasingly in many of my courses, if you do very well in one exam, for example, you're never going to get the top grade.
Right.
Or even if you did very well in 3 of the exams, you're never going to get the top grade. There are also assignments in there, there are also projects in there, and sometimes the top grade is reserved only for someone who's done very well in the project.
Right.
Or I throw open a challenge to students and say, if you do well in this, I won't even care about the exams. You can still get the top grade. Education has to be transformed in that manner, and only then we will get people who you as an industry are looking for,
Right.
a startup are looking for.
Right.
Even we as startup founders are looking for such kind of trained people actually.
Right. Right.
And it will happen, but it will take its time.
There is no innovation that has ever happened in this world without the 3 steps of simplification, modernization, and disruption.
Yeah.
And that disruption can either be a mind to market or a time to market. Something that is either
To put
systemic.
it another way, it's like abstraction, then particularization, and then productization.
Can you walk us through some examples in terms of how the simplification of a complex context that we face?
We as academics here for years have debated that there should be an experiential component to everything that we teach.
Right.
But we are research scrunched. If we say that we give one experimental setup for every student, that's nearly impossible, because with a kind of class strengths, we're looking at 200 in a class today. This might increase, this is only going to increase going forward as such. Right? But I believe that by leveraging technology in the coming years, all of this is going to get solved, because we are debating now of using AR and VR, for example, augmented and virtual reality. So every course in the future, I envisage that will have a complete virtual laboratory environment. So they are, whatever they are studying, they're going to experience it through virtual laboratories, for example, and then they'll do a little bit of a real laboratory experiment as well, right? And so in this manner, we are going to increasingly make all teaching a matter of not instant problem solving, but rather a participatory exercise where students come in and there is a two-way exchange. Today it's entirely one way, right? I am delivering lectures, they are supposed to memorize that and come back and show that they have understood.
Right.
There is very little chance of even doing the an exchange today, because it will be unsustainable in terms of time. With 200 students in a class or 100 students in a class, if I allow question and answers for everyone,
Right.
it's not going to work.
Yes.
So we are going to use technology to solve this. We have MOOCs now, which is like large scale lecture delivery platforms which students can access and consume offline. Right? They don't have to come to a classroom to do this. Right. COVID has done good in this way that we have understood and started to appreciate the power of remote technologies. Right? You're talking about remote work. We're talking now about remote learning, and this remote learning doesn't have to happen in an off-campus setting. Right? I as a lecturer, I as a professor can go and upload certain materials which the student can continuously access through the day, whenever they want, wherever they are, and do a participation, two-way participation as well. So materials available to them, and then the second thing is learning is becoming experiential, so that you can have, using virtual or augmented reality, for example, they go and perform these experiments whenever they want, wherever they want, at their convenient time, for example. And then third, big problem earlier has been in answering questions individually. Now, for example, I envisage chatbots being developed by which students can raise some questions, and the chatbot instantly answers their query. So we have to leverage technology, and through this, I think this issue of short attention spans driven by exam cycles will be overcome largely over a period of time.
What is your challenge with respect to industry participation with your curriculum?
So I see where you're getting at. You're saying that, okay, you do not have experimental facilities, but the industry has.
Yes.
Why don't you just partner with them? But there is a problem of something falling between the fingers actually. See, the jargon and terminologies that we use are completely different from what the industry uses. Forget about the educational or learning sphere, even in technological or research spheres, when we interact with our industry colleagues, right, sometimes things are lost in translation. We work in a completely different way to the way industry works. So the industry operates on, deadlines, 24-hour cycles, 6-month cycles, 8-month cycles, where they have deliverables to, which they have to achieve, certain targets to deliver on, and so on. We work in a more knowledge-driven environment where we go a bit slower. We are making new discoveries, we are making fundamental discoveries, but although I personally am somebody who works on a spectrum, basically I am very much interested in low as well as high TRLs, but typically the academic environment is one of low TRL, right? So the early stage discovery, proof of concept kind of a stage, but whereas the industry is more focused on high TRL, practically applied knowledge. They wouldn't care, or they wouldn't appreciate something that's coming ground up, rather than something that is immediately beneficial in their deliverable cycle as such. So this is where the mismatch happens. So we can, and we do send a large number of students on summer internships to the industry, but very often I'm finding that they're coming back without much change to themselves.
Time and space is economical, it is not infinite for any one of us.
Yeah.
How do you see the learning, which is so very centric to innovation, becoming more adaptive?
Today we have entrances happening at the bachelor's level, at the master's level, at PhD level. The bachelors are only 30 or 40% of our student population. Our student population increasingly has masters, taught masters, research masters, and PhD, right? And the entry to all of this is now anything between an exam to an interview. Okay, and we also have a vast system where we have people who are working on our projects. Actually, these are members of various projects. They're hired on project positions. They also work similar to us in a research learning environment. We have a couple of courses today which allow for students to do a semester long project with a professor, for which they can get a credit, right? And this is not a taught course. There is no exam. There is no defined end goal either. It is not as if if you achieve something, you get the best grade. They're working together with the professor, and the professor can specify a certain problem, and the student gets evaluated based on what kind of efforts they put in. There is no committee even. Typically the professor himself or herself evaluates the student. So there are courses like this. There are courses where students can do industry secondments. There are students also do foreign placements to go to other universities. So we are creating an environment where students can choose to learn from a range of evaluation mechanisms, and not just an exam based mechanism. Now on the other hand, we have made our bachelor's curriculum so flexible that today only 50% is a core curriculum. 50% of the credits is left to the student. They can do whatever they want. They can do management, they can do music, they can do arts, they can do finance. We are not judging them, right? Our core, if you say mechanical engineering, a person needs to do only half of his courses in mechanical engineering. Rest they can do in whatever area they want. So through these mechanisms, we are already changing it, and I think in a couple of years, the education is going to become increasingly experience oriented, increasingly innovation oriented.
Your award of the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship to pursue concepts of quantum phonomics. And I'm very curious to understand your views on pervasive computing, because that in a sense is one of the most definitive aspects of digital technologies.
Phononics, right, is a study of sound in its fundamental sense, and quantum phononics is trying to take it to its logical conclusion. If you are saying that, if you're studying electricity at a fundamental level, you're looking at an electron. If you're studying light at a fundamental level, you're looking at a photon. So if you're studying sound at a fundamental level, you're looking at a phonon, right? So that's the analog. So it is said that Albert Einstein himself coined this word called a phonon in the context of Bose-Einstein condensates, right? They were studying different types of materials, and phonons are baryons, so baryonic particles as such, which are actually, as opposed to matter particles, these are actually theorized particles. Like a photon or a phonon are theorized particles as such. So photon is it comes from the matter energy duality as as envisaged by Einstein's special relativity theory, that everything that is a matter or a particle is also a wave, right? Wave particle duality as such. So sound is a wave, so there should also be a particle underlying it, and that is a phonon, just like a photon underlies light waves, or an electron underlies an electric wave as such. So now quantum phononics, the goal ultimately is to try and realize sources of these sound units. This has never been done. There are a lot of theorizations of this. Recently I am reading that there are some also experimental proofs, but still very arcane, very esoteric. My dream is exactly what you're saying is, can we harness sound to have this pervasive computing? You can say how is that possible, right? But because ultimately sound and heat are the same. Does that surprise you? I don't know if you're...
No, if you say data, it has to be all the 4 forms, which is voice, video, audio and graphics. So audio is sound.
Yeah.
And sound is one of the most primal energies like heat.
They are two ends of the same spectrum.
Yeah.
That is what I learned after deep study.
Yeah.
In the sense that when you have incoherent vibration, pulsing through an object, that is heat.
Yeah.
When you have a coherent vibration, that is sound.
Yes.
As such.
Yeah.
Okay. So sound and heat being different manifestations of elastic energy, if we harness any energy. So tomorrow, for example, you could be a village housewife who is cooking on a chula, but then on the side you are generating heat that is being used in a quantum computer. This might look like a magical feat today, but I don't see it as an impossibility, because any quantum phenomenon as we see it today has to happen at extremely low temperatures. So you talk about these Google computers and all that, they're all happening at microkelvin temperatures. Microkelvin, so that's like few Kelvin after the universe started. That's the kind of low that's the kind of extreme cooling you're generating. Now obviously a chula is not in microkelvin temperature, so it will be many years before we realize this vision as such. But ultimately, if you manage to take control of a sound particle, these are the kinds of applications that I envisage. So the dream that we have is, like, suppose you produce a phonon and you produce a single phonon, and with that we will be able to peer inside materials and perform imaging using entanglement. That is, I will retain an phonon in my laboratory, and I will allow another phonon to go out and do its thing, but I'll know what it's doing because I have this with me, and whatever is happening to that is happening to this also. Right? So, and we can do this multiple things. I don't need to use 2 particles. I can use an n particle entanglement, and through this I'm going to enhance my image quality. It is well-known physics that if you have 1 by root 2 as a normal imaging error, you can have 1 by 2 to the raise n if you have entanglement based imaging. Right. So you can just improve the quality of imaging. You can do computing. You can do a host of things, but doing it with sound instead of electromagnetics means you can also do this with heat. And sound may never replace light, right, or electromagnetics, but it can run in parallel with it, because electromagnetics is producing heat. And all that heat, and bear in mind, today already you know that blockchain operations are producing as much heat as Ireland, for example. Every one of your computing operations is going to become like very expensive. And Moore's law, they say after a while you cannot increase computing power.
Right.
And the cooling becomes more of a challenge after a while than computing itself. Today we have maybe a dozen quantum computers in the entire world, but imagine if you have 1 billion quantum computers.
Right.
The amount of heat it is going to generate.
Correct.
We envisage a scenario, then you use that heat to run a parallel computing architecture. So you're cooling naturally, and you're doing some computing on the side, you're doing sensing on the side. This is what the sound revolution is about. Of course, we are miles away from all of this, primarily because I'm extremely research crunched. Right? We are an IIT, we are number 1 in India, but the kind of research funding we get is nothing compared to what MIT or Stanford or Harvard gets.
Right.
The fact that we still talk of these colleges in the same league itself is a great achievement for us.
True.
But reality is we are extremely low on resources. Just to buy one dilution refrigerator, which is what gets me to these low temperatures, to me I've not been able to do for the last 3 years since I got the award.
Given the fact that you are leading a blockchain enterprise, do you see this as a ledger settlement tool or valuation tool?
So, to correction, I'm not yet leading a blockchain enterprise. So, we are working on several applications of blockchain and proto enterprises in healthcare, in skilling, and in energy credit tokenization. So, I have proto enterprises, teams working on these 3 directions, of which healthcare is the most mature, followed by skilling, and energy credit tokenization or carbon credit tokenization that just started. So, to answer you, yes, I believe in the latter. I believe that blockchain is definitely a value creation, right? And I believe that the blockchain revolution is only getting started. It is not even like really started, right? Today, we have what I can say the earliest phase of blockchain, where yes, you're distributing data, but you're distributing data across classical computers.
Yes.
The real revolution is going to happen when you have quantum blockchain, when you're going to distribute data across quantum computers.
Or even if it is device, channel and medium independent.
Yes, correct. And today we are restricted to computers.
Right.
Imagine blockchain on a mobile phone, right? A blockchain on a little mobile device, right? And blockchain on the cloud, which is already there, but
or a wearable IoT,
everything. Blockchain leveraging IoTs, all that is going to happen, and ultimately, quantum blockchain is going to, come when the quantum technology, computing revolution also becomes mass based as such. So absolutely, it's it's one of the most exciting technologies, that we are working on. We remain interested in. So the way we start working as academics is that we look at trends and we start working on them a few years in advance, right? So much before, for example, metamaterials were a thing, we were working in our group on metamaterials. When we used to go and talk to the industry, they say, "What is this? It's too esoteric, too arcane. When is this ever going to see the light of the day?"
Right.
We were working on them. Today, metamaterials, Sony and Philips are having metamaterial innovations, in their devices. A camera today has a metamaterial inside it.
Right.
Right. So, various applications. Similarly, I started working on quantum and particularly on phononics, envisaging a certain trend over there. And then similarly, started working on blockchain almost 5 years ago now. You wouldn't believe it. So in those 5 years ago, it was really not such a buzz as it is today. And absolutely, the power of the transformative power of blockchain is enormous. And we believe that blockchain is going to revolutionize not just things like wherever today they as you said is just ledger. Right? Today it is working in those contexts where there are ledgerizations happening, but blockchain is going to revolutionize internet. Because wherever there is trust, there blockchain is going to come in. Blockchain is going to revolutionize banking, is going to revolutionize governance. I see, in the coming digital age, national boundaries being broken down because of digital currencies and digital passports, digital vaccine certificates, for example, which are non-fungible. Right? This is where we are going. That is the disruption that we are working on today.
How mature is this thought about ecosystem processes?
There is a lot of realization on this fact that we have to build the ecosystem. It can't be just a partisan thing, a parochial thing. It can't be a bits and pieces thing. It cannot be a marketplace alone. Right? That is also part of it.
Right.
But it has to be an overarching, and it is also being done in a government level. So, for example, government has been suggesting that we adopt the same international rules and guidelines such as FHIR, for example. We have this whole Ayushman Bharat digital mission, which increasingly says that any digital entity here will only be accepted if it is FHIR compliant as such, right? So they all are realizing that this has to be an ecosystem thing. Digital cannot be a bits and pieces, piecemeal, parochial or parts thing.
So I want to kind of wrap this conversation. What is your words of wisdom with respect to that importance of innovation and its actual practice more than sloganeering about it?
Sri Aurobindo was famous for saying that mind has various categories. You have ordinary mind, inspired mind, intuitive mind, overmind, supermind, and so on. So I think it is our normal mind touching these higher realms of consciousness. These are just modes of thinking, I believe, which are not normal or natural to us. We don't dwell on them very often, but I believe every human being has a capability to access these modes, definitely. And the innovation, the process of innovation is about being able to reach these modes in a sustainable manner. It can't be a one aha moment, but can I make this happen every now and then as much as possible without killing me?
Right.
Because that one aha moment is going to kill a person, right? He can come back and that nothing else happens.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that we can dwell on those higher modes of thinking in a very sustainable manner, in a way that doesn't break us?
Right.
This is the future of humanity. So man becoming Superman, I think it's possible if we can make sure that we can be on that innovation sphere or on those higher spheres of modes of thinking in as much as possible, and also if it is not as a sudden phenomenon, right? And it is an extremely excruciating problem for me as a writer, as a poet, because when I sit down to write something, I can never write 3 lines properly, right? And someday maybe I'm in a class and I get 3 beautiful lines.
Right.
It's just out of nowhere, it just flashes in my mind, and I have to take out my book and note it down over there.
Right.
And I just wish it would be more organic. I can sit down, have a coffee and say poetry now appear, and then I get 3 lines, right?
Right.
So can that happen? Of course, this is an ideal, but if it can happen, then imagine the number of problems we can solve. This is again, to invoke another philosopher, to go from analytic thinking to synthetic thinking, Immanuel Kant. Right? Analytic thinking is our normal mode of knowledge. We collect information and we make some ratiocination out of it. But a synthetic thinking is getting information that is not evident directly, right? Just getting some new kinds of things. But can we be synthetic in our in the way we think? And if we do that, I think we can solve a range of problems for us, and without getting ourselves killed in the process, and hopefully make the world a better place.
On that note, Professor, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed this conversation. Very insightful. Deeply appreciate
Thank you.
The time that you have taken do this session. I would hopefully want to come back for a few more.
Absolutely. Yes,
as the season progresses.
Talking to you as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Today's topic, innovation, is like breathing. It doesn't need anybody's permission, but it needs discipline. The discipline of conscious breathing is also similar to conscious innovation. So let's break this topic down about innovation. It is not an abstract, gooey, unrecognizable subject. Innovation is 3 things. The first one is simplification. What do you simplify? You simplify the complexity of understanding a subject, and in the process you create an hypothesis for a solution. The second step is modernization, and modernization is essentially bringing that solution to relevance, to the relevance of life and the times that we live in, and how it can be applied to the people who use it. And third is disruption. The disruption is between expectations in terms of a minimum value that can be delivered, or aspirations, a maximum value that can be delivered. Innovation, therefore, is both mind to market and time to market. And both are disruptive. At this point on our planet, we are at a strategic inflection point. There is a great need for more mind to market than time to market solutions. We are in the middle of a digital revolution. Just like the fire, digital is changing every aspect of human life. And therefore, this lens of digital needs to be applied. And what outcome does it provide? It provides this ability to shift our societies from a financial ecosystem-led one to a human ecosystem-led one. Which means that you and I have to be participative in this process. And participation means being prepared. And how do you know you are prepared? So there is a scale for innovation. It starts from innocence, awareness, understanding, definition, competence, and excellence. On every subject, we have to be able to measure where we are. And the minimum threshold that needs to be established is definition on any given subject matter, because it becomes possible thereafter to scale from definition to excellence. It is very difficult to start from innocence all over again. But imagine this. This innocence to excellence is a progressive scale. What happens when you see the other side, which is a regressive scale? It starts from ignorance. And there are subjects where we need to move the needle from ignorance into at least innocence. And there are subjects where humanity has made tremendous progress, and we need to re-establish how we can take that definition that we understand into excellence. We have been able to build a great definition around commerce, whether it is a B2B, whether it is a B2C. The digital offers us this great opportunity to connect every single human being on this planet, and in the process set the definition for what products and services are required to enable a higher quality of life. The customer-consumer-led business models influencing businesses who create value chains with other businesses to be able to create and deliver products and services that are relevant to the future. This whole concept of value needs to be understood from the point of both creation and addition, which is essentially the mind to market and the time to market. We understand that the mindsets need to be changed, and this mindset change can happen with design thinking, abstracting the potential and connecting it to performance. Design, on the other hand, we know is something that has trade-offs. With design deriving from design thinking, the trade-offs can be minimized. I hope that this is a great single takeaway from this episode. My next guest is going to be Santosh Babu, founder and CEO of OD Alternatives and Orglens. And the topic will be leadership. Write to fow@giggr.app. We want to pursue a dialogue that is very important in order to raise the value quotient or the value capital, for which we need to enrich it with intellectual and human capital. Without this triad, we don't have a growth engine, and that is the problem of today's society. Thank you very much for being part of this episode. I look forward to bringing another episode. #Tuesdays at 5. Until then, be safe, be happy, be innovative.